Good morning, 7 East.
All right, people, it is Thursday, which means the turning point of the week has passed, and I use that term purposely because of the topic for today's show. We are on the air. Very simple agenda. I'm trying to keep it short as we get close to the end. And speaking of the end, on this day, June 4th, first thing on our agenda is the daily countdown. I find that very therapeutic, just going through each number towards the end. And the numbers might actually be much lower than we suspect. Who knows? And then to the main thing for today, talking about Gettysburg, assignment assigned today, which you can also work on tomorrow as well, and it's due Monday. So in our weekly calendar, this is where we are on Thursday. New assignment, Gettysburg Interactive Slideshow questions. Google Meet today at 12:30. If you want to wait to do the assignment until the Google Meet, that might be helpful to you because I'm going to go through it, and you can ask questions in real time. Tomorrow, Friday, even though the radio episode numbers are off, today's 42. I didn't do one yesterday, so I mixed up all the episodes. But tomorrow, end of Gettysburg Address, famous speech. We'll go on about that. And then the new and improved Civil War Quiz at Live 2. But the number of the day is 17, because there are 17 days of school left. Or 12. I don't know which it is at this point. It's like Schrodinger's end date. It's a superposition between 12 and 17. That was a funny joke if you got it. But yeah, 17. So now let me X out of my free radio slideshow. Take a look at the assignment. So as usual, we're doing the Google form. And because I'm such a nice person, I give you the place to find the topic of each question. So we have the slide number. And even within the slide, if there's a video clip, I give you the time also to look. So there should be no email saying, I don't know where to find it. I'm telling you exactly where to look. So Gettysburg Interactive Slideshow. I'm just going to go through it with you now. So if you want to do it with me, you can, using this video. So Gettysburg Interactive Slideshow for the battle that was the turning point of the Civil War. And this in the back is a photograph of the actual battlefield. It is preserved. It is a historic site. It's run by the National Park Service, I believe. I've never actually gotten to go, and I really want to go someday. Maybe this summer. We'll see. I visited Saratoga last summer for Revolutionary War stuff, so maybe I'll do Gettysburg this summer. We'll see. So setting the stage, I start off with a video clip that's going to give you some background. I'm not going to watch it all here on this episode of Free Weekly Radio. You can do that on your own. But it gives you some background on the battle, and I like the idea of using a theater background. It makes it all look very cinematic. But you can click that video, so if you click the play button, go through it, and now we're on the next slide. Civil War map, so I'm trying to update you and show you where we are geographically. And if you look at the map, Battle of Gettysburg is the yellow little compass star. And this is the farthest north the Confederacy has ever gone. So they're out of the border states, which are also Union states, but they're in a deep blue Union state right now. They're in Pennsylvania. And once again, they have passed Washington, D.C. And I could be wrong about this, but I believe that as the South was preparing to march north, they had a letter prepared, assuming they were able to defeat the Union Army. And this letter was addressed to Lincoln, and they were supposed to leave it on his desk after capturing Washington. So they go north to fight the Union Army, and they're supposed to double back and come around and take Washington, kind of like a fish hook. You go up north and you come back around. So 5 facts about Gettysburg. The battle took place over the course of 3 days, so July 1st to 3rd, 1863. July 4th, right after. It's going to be a festive occasion for more than one reason this time. Also the bloodiest battle in American history. Over 50,000 people were killed, wounded, and so on. Antietam was the bloodiest single day. The bloodiest battle belongs to Gettysburg. 64 medals of honor were awarded. This is the highest award you can get in the military for bravery and doing some incredible acts of courage. Oftentimes, people who win it don't even survive. They get it awarded after their death for something they do on the battlefield. But 64, and I think this is more than any battle ever in any war afterwards. It was the inspiration for perhaps the most famous speech in American history, the Gettysburg Address. Very short speech, but also a very good speech, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. It was the biggest battle and turning point of the Civil War. So I put that in caps for a reason, turning point. So what is a turning point? We've all heard that phrase before, but if you're asked the $100 bill type of question I always ask, where if someone shows up on the street, offers you $100 to explain something, for some reason we seem to freeze up at that. Well, let's see if we can do that. What is a turning point? Well, in history we use the term turning point a lot. What does it actually mean? If you're a fan of a sports team, you probably know this idea all too well. In the course of any game, there is at least one moment or point where it becomes clear to you, the fan, that one side is going to win or has the momentum on their side in the game. This could be a big interception, turning an inning-ending double play with the bases loaded, or going on a 15-0 run before the end of the half in basketball. Speaking as a Jet fan, the turning points have usually pretty much almost exclusively gone against the Jets. So anytime there's a turning point in the game, it's usually a cause for me to get even sadder watching the Jets. But I have confidence about this year. In war and history, turning points work the same way. We define them as a moment in a series of events where the fortune or success changes from one side to the other and alters the outcome. Think back to our unit on the American Revolution. Remember Saratoga. The Battle of Saratoga was the turning point. Before that point, America was not winning. America was just surviving, but after defeating the British at Saratoga, it shifted the momentum. Countries like France and Spain are now going to join the United States in fighting Britain. That is the point when everything changed for the better for the United States. And of course, turning point, you really can't tell if something's a turning point until after the fact. If America didn't win the war, then you couldn't call Saratoga a turning point. So you have to wait till all the events passed, and you look back and say, what was the turning point? That is why turning points in sports, you always see it on the post-game show. Let's say, what was the turning point of the game? When so-and-so threw an interception, they got returned for a touchdown. That could have been the turning point. You see when everything changes fortune and the success goes from one side to the other. So day one for Gettysburg, we have a curtain background. Love the theatrical stuff. So Gettysburg day one, have a map for you. So it was July 1st, 1863. The Union Army is set to defend the town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And the map, the blue is the Union, red is Confederacy. A larger Confederate army advances on the town and attacks the Union army heavily on the Union right. So I kind of labeled it. It's almost like stage right, stage left, depending on which way you're looking. Either one could be either way. So Union right, you can see how they're attacking mostly on the Union right. Union army retreats and leaves the city moving southeast. And you see the arrows, dotted lines. They're getting pushed out of the city and moving right south of it. So the Confederates chase after them, setting up the next 2 days of the battle just outside the town. So not much happens on day one. It's just kind of like the prologue to the battle. Now we go on to day two, when things get more eventful. Gettysburg day two, July 2nd, 1863. On day two, Robert E. Lee plans to attack the left side of the Union Army to get around and surround them. That's kind of how you fought battles back then. You tried to get around the side of somebody. It's almost like in football when you try to run around the edge of the line. Lee figured that the Union Army would be weaker on the left after earlier fighting on the right, where they probably moved soldiers away from the left. And he was right. So going back, they thought that, okay, the Union was getting attacked on their right on the first day, which means they probably moved soldiers from other parts to help them on the right, which means they should be weaker somewhere else, which was true. And the most famous fighting occurs on a hill called Little Round Top. So you see here, the Confederacy tries to go around the Union left, and Little Round Top is the most famous. So Little Round Top, the outnumbered Union troops defending the hill called Little Round Top, had to face ferocious waves of Confederate attacks. The Union officer in charge was a world languages professor, yay for teachers, named Joshua Chamberlain, who signed up to support the North in the war. The Union soldiers on Little Round Top eventually run out of ammunition while the Confederates are preparing another attack. At this point, Chamberlain gives the order for one of the most desperate and heroic actions of the Civil War to try and save the Union from defeat. The next slide has an optional clip showing what happened. It's from the movie Gettysburg. And I'm going to not watch the whole thing because it's pretty long, but it's too long for this slideshow and me broadcasting it. But I'm going to pause over a familiar face. And as I click the clip, right there, right there, bottom left, right here. You might recognize that face. Probably not, because this person is much older than the last time you saw them. This, I believe, is the actor E. Thomas Howell. If that name sounds familiar, it's because he played Ponyboy in the Outsiders movie. So the Civil War, facial hair, and hat obscuring his features, but this is Ponyboy all grown up down here. I think you get a better sense. You can see it in the eyes. That is Ponyboy from earlier in the year when we watched the Outsiders movie. But I'm going to skip the clip. I would pause the video now and maybe watch it if you'd like to. Lots of dramatic music. As far as 90s war movies goes, it goes pretty well. So what happens, just to summarize, they run out of ammunition, so Chamberlain leads a charge with their bayonets, and they eventually push the South back. And they avoid defeat on day 2 by defending their left flank or left side on Little Round Top with a desperate bayonet charge. But the battle is not close to being over. This is just day 2. Most of both armies and most of the fighting will be towards the middle of the field on day 3. So Union has survived attack on their left, attack on their right. Now it's day 3. So just to kind of close the book on Chamberlain, he gets awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions as commander on Little Round Top. Jeff Daniels plays him in the Gettysburg film. Facial hair, more impressive in real life, I guess. I think the costumes were not the highest quality, but this is the Medal of Honor that he received on the right here. Day 3, the final day. So Gettysburg, Day 3, July 3rd, 1863. After failing to turn the Union Army's left flank the day before, Robert E. Lee decides to risk everything by ordering an all-out charge on the Union center. Lee hoped that by attacking the Union right and left on previous days, that the Union Army would have moved soldiers away from the center to help their sides, which would make them weaker in the center. Once again, this was true. If successful, the Confederacy will have split the Union Army in half, easily being able to crush the divided Union forces and win the Battle of Gettysburg. So right where this yellow arrow is, they wanted to just break through and kind of cut right through that blue line, and then they'll fight them off separately. And the climax of the Battle of Gettysburg, this is the climax. It is called Pickett's Charge, named after General Pickett, who was a Southern general. He didn't actually lead the charge himself, but it was his soldiers. The outcome of the battle and maybe the war is decided right here. So they would all-out charge. And the next slide contains an optional video clip showing the reenactment of Pickett's Charge from Gettysburg, the film. Probably the most exciting part of the movie to me. So I'll just kind of click on it. But it picks up right at the point where they are rushing the Union at Cemetery Ridge. And towards the end, I don't want to spoil it. Well, I guess I have to spoil it because this battle is going to be over soon. But towards the end, I have this kind of epilogue to the battle where a Confederate general is on the ground dying pretty much, and he's calling out for one of his best friends is actually on the other side in the Union. So I write here, the scene on the previous slide shows the climax of the Battle of Gettysburg. The Confederate general who's wounded leading the charge was General Lewis Armistead. Before the Civil War, Armistead was best friends with Union General Winfield Scott Hancock. In the clip, Armistead is calling out to see his friend General Hancock because in spite of being on opposite sides of the war, they were still friends, and he wanted to apologize to him for the fact that they wound up fighting each other. Kind of sad. As it turns out, General Hancock had already been wounded on the Union side, which upset General Armistead, which is why he was so upset and looked like he was about to break down. Hancock would survive, but Armistead dies from his wounds soon after. And I include this part because it shows that the relationship between these two friends and soldiers shows what the American Civil War was like for so many people. It was friend versus friend, brother versus brother, sister versus sister. People who used to be united under one flag now found themselves on opposite sides of a war. And this wasn't anything totally unique. It happened to a lot of families, tons of families. Even Robert E. Lee, when he decided he was going to join the South, he told his son, who was also in the Army, you do what your conscience tells you to do. And his son did join him in the South, but he was prepared to have his son possibly join the North and fight against him. Lots of drama and family drama right there. And this is the famous painting, Peter F. Rothermill's Battle of Gettysburg painting, and this is the climax of the battle when the two sides meet at Cemetery Ridge during Pickett's Charge. The movie, if you watch the clip, it kind of does take a lot of inspiration from this painting. A lot of the visuals are the same, even the placement of the wall, even though it was the actual wall when they filmed it. Pickett's charge ultimately fails, and the Confederates lost so many men that they were forced to retreat from the battlefield before more Union forces arrived. The Union could breathe a sigh of relief as they took the South's best punch to date and were still standing at the end. The Union had won the Battle of Gettysburg. So Battle of Gettysburg, losses. Union side loses 23,000 soldiers. Confederate side 28,000. Antietam was about half of this. That was only on one day. It takes place over the course of 3 days. USA victory. And then I have the conclusion to the battle, another video that you can look. It also has some colorized photography of journalists who showed up the day after and took photos of the battlefield, and they saw the destruction firsthand and were able to record it for us. So why was the Battle of Gettysburg so important? To put it simply, it was the turning point. Remember, we just talked about that. The South was winning the war before Gettysburg. After Gettysburg, it was losing the war. The defeat and high number of losses stopped Robert E. Lee from being able to try to invade the North again. He didn't have the soldiers or resources to do it, losing over 25% of his entire army in one battle. The only way for the South to win at this point was to play defense and do so much damage to the invading Union armies, hoping that the North would eventually give up and accept Confederate independence. Similar to what America did to Britain in the Revolutionary War. So that second strategy of offense that Lee liked, can't do it anymore. They don't have the soldiers for it. They don't have the resources. They just got to play defense now and hope the North quits. But with a personality like Abraham Lincoln, that is not going to happen. Gettysburg in history and memory. I included this just because I love the movie so much. Gettysburg is remembered as the deadliest battle in American history. In the years since, it has stood as a symbol for what happens when a country, a people, a family turns on itself in hatred and violence. This idea was summed up so well in the famous movie Remember the Titans, which I believe you watched last year, where a coach brings his team divided by race to Gettysburg for training to show them the importance of coming together as one and what can happen if they don't. So I've included this optional clip on the next slide if you're interested in seeing this short monologue filmed at Gettysburg. This is Gettysburg, the picture down below. And there's the famous great speech that Denzel Washington's character gives in Remember the Titans. And yes, before anyone mentions it, I know they filmed an episode of The Office at Gettysburg in Season 8, where Gabe gets mistaken for an Abe Lincoln reenactor and delivers an impromptu performance to much applause from the tourists. One of the few highlights of that final season, which I felt was lacking in many other facets. And the Gettysburg Address. You can't talk about Gettysburg, the battle, without the Gettysburg Address. To commemorate the sacrifice of the soldiers who died, President Lincoln gave his most famous speech, and perhaps the most famous speech in American history. At the battlefield on November 19th, 1863, so this is months afterwards, the Gettysburg Address, as it is known, was a statement of encouragement to the country to keep up the fight and stay true to America's highest founding ideals in a time when the United States was fighting for survival. This short speech, it can look like a paragraph to you if you saw it typed out. This short speech has received legendary status and has been recited on many occasions and in films. One instance was in the 2012 film Lincoln, which shows President Lincoln being approached by a pair of young Union soldiers trying to impress him by reciting the speech from memory. I've included this optional clip on the next slide, but there will be more on the Gettysburg Address in the future, meaning tomorrow we're going to look at it in a bit more depth. And here we have a drawing of what it was like, President Lincoln giving the Gettysburg Address on the site of the battle. And here I have the clip of the soldiers trying to impress him by reciting the Gettysburg Address, which you can look at as well if you'd like to listen to it. This concludes the Gettysburg Interactive Slideshow. Please complete the Google Form assignment that is based off of the information in these slides. If you want to learn more and see some photos and virtual tours of the actual Gettysburg battlefield, you can click here, that link right there, and you'll be taken to the official website run by the National Park Service that has a ton of information. Thank you for joining me on this virtual field trip. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you at the Google Meet if you're going to be there later today. This is going to be Mr. Lepre signing off.